In the darkness of the night, dressed all in black and barefoot, she crept up very quietly towards the enemy. With a sharp blade, she stabbed right behind the ear into the carotid artery. She then turned the blade up to 90 degrees, making the victim unable to gasp for air or scream for help. Nieves Fernandez was the leader of a guerrilla group whose arsenal of weapons initially consisted of just 3 rifles, so they made their own firearms with a few pieces of gas pipes. She was a talented markswoman, but she was just as talented with her bolo knife. Together with her troop, she destroyed over 200 Japanese soldiers in a terrible way. Nieves Fernandez led a life as a teacher in the province of Tacloban, but when the Second World War began and the Japanese invaded the Philippines, her whole life changed. The Japanese brought fear and terror with them, and hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives. Houses and apartments were arbitrarily confiscated. In the process, many women and children were abducted and then forced to make the Japanese soldiers happy. When the Japanese arrived in Tacloban, Nieves Fernandez feared for the lives of her students and decided to act before the girls were forced into prostitution for the Japanese war brothels. She began recruiting locals from the area and encouraged around 110 men to resist the Japanese occupation alongside her. Nieves Fernandez was the first and only Filipino woman to fight against the Japanese imperial occupation during the Second World War. After training her recruits in the deadly use of a knife, she also taught them how to quietly take out the enemy without attracting much attention. Together with her fighters, Fernandez carried out a series of attacks, and over time, the Japanese forces began to fear her greatly. They would often sneak through the dense jungle to Japanese troop camps in the area to trap and ambush soldiers. At first, the Japanese were a little confused because they didn't know the enemy coming from the jungle. But when they found out her name, they put a reward of 10,000 Philippine pesos on the head of Nieves Fernandez. There were several attempts to hunt her down and capture her, but she managed to escape capture. The guerrilla group also made their own weapons, which were filled with gunpowder and nails, and they had made these special weapons themselves from gas pipe parts. Subsequently, they rescued many people from Japanese enslavement and also managed to completely liberate some villages from the Japanese. In order to protect themselves from the atrocities of the Japanese, civilians in the Philippines formed groups over time, and there was an extensive Filipino resistance movement. Post-war studies found that around 250,000 people were organized under guerrilla groups. Within 2 years, over 200 Japanese soldiers died by the hands of Commander Fernandez and her comrades. Through her incredible and fearless efforts, she saved many young girls from ending up as Japanese comfort women. Nevertheless, the cruel war forced many women into this situation. During the Second World War, the Japanese continued their wartime tradition and provided the soldiers with so-called comfort women. Around 40% of them came from Japan, but also from occupied territories such as Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and China. It is estimated that there were between 20,000 and 200,000 women, and only 30% survived the war. Thank you for watching, and if you liked the documentary, don't forget to subscribe for more interesting videos.